My grandmother had a baby named Joy Love, died the same day. My mother's twin, died in the womb, and she ingested part of that, so she is technically chimera, and then she was born a couple months later. And maybe some of these babies were taken, they're unaccounted for. My grandma didn't talk much about them. Jeez, I'm sorry, keeps doing that. But it's a mystery to me because my grandfather had probably like 25 kids, and I'm just finding out about all of that mess with all the things that he was involved with. But what I do know is that we are wonderfully and fearfully made in God's image, and they didn't need to mess with that. And you just look at the nuclear Magellan motor in our cells and know that there is a higher functioning creator that is driving all those forces and subatomic particles, the spaces between matter, and throughout the universe, and all this junk DNA and the spaces that lie between everything is actually the most important and what's stored in the membranes of everything. So he's driving that functionality in all of our cells, and everyone has that divine spark, and that's what they wanted control over. That single point of life entry that makes us God potentiated in embryonic fluidity. So they created this false comfort wound to be dependent on them, an artificial womb, and they did this in society too on a larger level to keep you plugged into the matrix and not plugged up and streaming to the free 24/7 clear connection Wi-Fi. It's in your DNA and Jacob's ladder to your creator. What they also did, like I said, we were picked from birth, experimented in the wombs. They put a limbic firewall and installed that in a mindset, and that was used to prevent our use from others and to turn us on and off at their retrieval and disposal schedules. And what a limbic firewall does is it's a dynamic neural retraining center, and it's kind of like brainstem scarring, but more efficient, more of a delicate procedure. And it acts on the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the cingulate cortex, which is the seat of emotional and intelligence and the brain's anxiety switch. So it's closely integrated with the immune system, and it's a feeling reactory center. It controls blood pressure, breathing, regulates the functions of your internal organs and those systems. And then you become hypersensitive, and then you begin to react to stimuli that you'd usually discard as not being dangerous to the body. So then they use that to an advantage. And that caused overfiring of protective threat mechanisms in the midbrain. And then that resulted in a distorted, unconscious reaction to things. And sensory perceptions, protective responses laid in, overlay systems could become easier, and slide memories with the acceptance of that. Biological manipulation, because they did a lot of surgeries out there too. Or they could do the opposite of that and turn it around. So either way, they tried to work everything in their favor. But back to this Wi-Fi connection to heaven. Just know that God is a covenant relationship creator. So if they can keep you out of communication, it certainly keeps you out of covenant with Him. And they love to make humans forget the vital and crucial part of themselves, that they were created for so much more. And here to kick ass and do so much more on behalf of heaven's will. Other things we saw out there was we saw reptilian fights to the death from the strongest ones. They had ropes and cables down from the tower, and there was one spot that was a square, a block that they always had partitioned off, and it was blood smeared all the time. And we feared having to fight that reptilian scaling along outside of the wall. It just happened out of the blue, and we'd just be standing up as a crowd watching this. After seeing this game, it was like a sinister Indiana Jones looking stunt, but it wasn't a stunt, it was real. It was a cruel death match. Very bizarre fight club. So I saw Andy Perro do this, and why they made us watch this was so that we would want to become like him, because he was strong enough to kill a reptilian, to beat a reptilian to death. And I just saw Andy Perro in that scenario, and in passing, so I saw him fight. So his stories are true, and he was there. We saw the Panopticon Cloning Center matches too, which were above and beyond bizarre, because if you have just unlimited amounts of money and resources and time, a lot of things can come out of an idle mindset. But Montauk always was and always will be the home base, because it's a coded word in itself, and it means to bring out divinity or to turn it off or on. So it's an ongoing program and phenomena, because they couldn't turn it off, or the phantom pulses that actually live in its participants. So we, in effect, having been raised by this birthed artellect, became its carrier frequencies. So they considered us lethal weapons, and there was actual wars that happened out there, and people wanting to keep us in the earth, in the bases, and other people, factions that wanted good for us and wanted to keep us topside. So just being around each other can activate each other. And with our own divine mindsets we released into the world and our documented entropy. JFK was even spending summers out there in places where time travel happened, and we swam through time streams, pulling things out, putting things back. He was at the Andy Warhol complex. We fought the real Clone Wars and reached an accretion level to override it. And the term, I wish you like 100 clone deaths, all came from this place. Because what they did was they plugged the necks into the clone necks into a rapid learning machine device so that they can know everything about you. And you can ask forgiveness for things an evil clone has done or may even still be doing. But they released clones that are trying to undo what we've done, but it's not going to work, because we know who we are and what we've done and where we've been, and we're not there anymore, but the scars are. Another thing that they had out there was this clone apartment building, and it was a white apartment building with 2 levels, and it was like a haunted house in there, and they had no idea how to control us, so they just contained us in there. They had guard animals of a way different caliber than what you've ever seen, and these were like pit bulls on steroids that somehow could flash in and out of reality sometimes. I don't know exactly how they were doing all this, but they had us in a loop in this apartment building. And what these beasts, these hellhounds, would be doing to scare us to staying there and to not even think about trying to leave there was they had us watch these beasts rip a child apart outside. So they had armed guards outside. There was a black limo waiting to take you somewhere that you didn't want to go. Now this really isn't any different than, like, say, the mafia feeding humans to pigs. I had a family member that actually happened to, an uncle. So there was surveillance lasers, armed men. It's like you were walking through thick darkness there, thick fog. It was very hazy. Sometimes there was no touch torture in place. Fences and invisible fences. And we dealt with Resident Evil, because at this point in time we were residents there, we were assets, and we were living in Resident Evil. It's our intellectual property vaults, not Hollywood's. They want your life, and they want you forever. And I've had many supernatural experiences with black dogs that may be related to this. So what you need to do is just get to the point where you become a turnip, where they can't get any blood out of, and become as humanly possible as you can, because they had counterfeits of us and tried to do everything and recalibrate and try to override what we did, and it was just crazy. But they don't know what we did is the thing, and that's not going to change anything with what they keep trying. So don't fear, and when Casbolt's rage subsides, he'll come online again in some sanity, because when you go rogue, sometimes you're out of range for even the best operatives. So much love and protection to him and to all the others in England, Ireland, Canada, Great Britain, Wales, Sweden, Denmark, Kazakhstan, and any other place I can't think of. Because I have to switch to a different type of media because of all the culminations that are happening here. So these will be my last videos. Anyways, when you hear about like chopped up cloning, recycled material, like the Skinwalker Ranch, and me talking about the gray demon robots laying in like vats of cattle blood and stuff at Montauk, that is still going on. That's never went away. It's still a problem. They want the populace to be cannibals like their wicked ancestors were, that God wiped off the face of the earth. And one of the sickest memories I have is of tranny Barbara Bushman coming into my containment unit, which was out on some hill, with a southern accent and drag, and they'll rape you, brainwash you, torture you, put smoke into the vents with God knows what substances, psi attack you, treat you like a pet, put you back on the shelf, in a room that's simulated just like your room. So mostly in altars when we got along with them. Because sometimes I would wake up drooling even, and she had my clone put aborted fetuses or pieces of that on a Pringle and eat it, and then make her laugh and say something like, cheddar cheese weaklings. Because you gotta realize these people are not human. And I was probably never happier in my life, realizing and proving that I was stronger than them, engaging in battle. I'm sure the angels in heaven were cheering us on when we did stuff like that and broke the mold. I'm sure they were having a party. Because when you get to that point, a certain point, there's nothing that they can do. So then they just wrap you in curses, mind control, false constructs, like a tight solidified cocoon. But when it's like a thread, slowly, like a light hitting a cocoon, it'll slowly, eventually unravel and come undone and collapse and ricochet back off into the sender, because you reap what you sow. And it's a time of harvesting now, and if you're on God's calendar, you know the times and seasons for everything that's not new under the sun. I mean, even they try to mess with the sun even and duplicate the sun. But if you think that's disturbing, what I just told you, how many HEK, whatever they call it, aborted fetal cells have you ingested that are masked to taste good in your food, your drinks, your shots, your makeup, whatever it is? It's covert, overt, subliminal, silent acceptance of Satanism on a worldwide level. They're even spraying blood in chemtrails, and it creates biophysical changes, but all that cellular debris, that can be shed, and you can heal from this type of warfare. It's germ warfare. And who created germ warfare? The Germans. What they knew is that there's only a certain type of people that can be used for operations dealing with, say, cannibalism, or the Kandahar giant incidents where people were feeding their own children to giants. So they know that you have to have degrees of experimentation and exposure to just be functional in a situation like that, because if you've seen it all and done it all, it doesn't faze you. So also the ancestry tests, I don't really believe, because if you think about it, the controller's lines are so inbred and so degenerate that they need the purest blood codes they could find to open stargates, which wouldn't be Cain's line, because they're still after star maps and other things that pure souls and bloodlines bring into this earth. Bush Sr. was also in cahoots with Draco Prime, and one day he came into a schoolhouse that was out there. So he comes into this schoolhouse that was there and goes up to the front, rapes me, looks into my eyes. I call him Papa, Grandpa, whatever it was. And because at Montauk they had, well, what he did was he went over and there was these benches and there's about 4 kids sitting there. So then he pulled the 2 off the side, broke their necks, drank their blood, and left them and said, take care of this. Told me to take care of it. So my mind split, and then I went into the closet and I got this Air Force jacket and a blanket and wrapped the kid in it and turned the jacket around, put him up on a hook on the wall. And then I started teaching out of this book because the camera was on me and you always had to follow through with any type of instructions you were given. It was just verbatim and you're on autopilot basically. So eventually I had a guy from the CIA come in and he looked at me like he almost felt sorry for me because he'd been watching me from the back compound house, and then he took the kid and told me to go to the front and continue. So I was teaching there when I was 12 years old, and they made a comic out of this, very short one, but there was 2 old guys that gave us beer for working for them and other substances. As we were older teenagers, they were still assholes to us. They could abuse you at any time, embarrass you, give you a list of things to do, trigger you, switch and bait. They just sat in this back house. They had a recliner, and they shadowed us either with drones or just through the cybernetics that we had. And they had papers on the table each day with a different set of assignments. And one of the guys, I remember, had sex with me in a chair before letting Lane pair up with me. So technically then Lane was in charge of me from then on. And what we did is we went to this fort-looking building that we went to. And it had this like oval dirty window out in front and this cement love seat. But it really wasn't a window or a love seat, but we just pretended it was. And because none of the buildings made sense, and really I think they made it that way so that we had to figure out how to get into these buildings and not leave a trace of anything, and then we're given different tools to figure it out in our training. So at first I couldn't jump as high as Lane could because he had this zigzag thing, so then he'd help me jump up there, and then I got the hang of it. And then we'd sit on that cement seat and we'd look out over this field like kings of the castle. And nobody bothered us there. No kids visited. We were like on our own. And there was 2 AK-47s on the sides of this building house. And then we'd hear a signal and jumped up to the top with them and stand there and pose. One time we had a picture taken and for this trainer guy, because this trainer guy was standing there watching us, and sometimes we'd get rewarded for doing something horrific at his command. And he had blonde hair and a suit and tie, and he was on his cell phone a lot. And